You're back. Tonight we're going through 4chan threads that are messed up and genuinely unsettling. Posts that are real and wrong, hit like, subscribe, sound up, and let's start. I was working the overnight shift at a 24-hour pharmacy on the edge of Albuquerque in April 2018. The store sat in a strip mall near Coeur Boulevard, close enough to the city that we still got traffic all night, but far enough out that most hours felt empty. I was the cashier at the front counter, and the only other person in the building was a pharmacist named Mike who stayed in the back filling prescriptions. The overnight shift was usually boring. People came in for cold medicine, snacks, baby supplies, whatever they needed after normal stores closed. Around midnight, the parking lot lights would buzz and flicker a little, and the automatic doors would make that same soft clicking sound every time someone walked in. The first time I noticed the man, I didn't think much of him. He was sitting in a gray sedan parked near the far end of the lot. Not near the entrance, not under the brighter lights, just sitting there. I saw him because I was wiping down the counter and looking through the glass while waiting for customers. I figured he was waiting for someone. That was normal. People waited in cars all the time. I had seen parents sleeping in the driver's seat while their kids shopped, delivery drivers checking their phones, people taking a break before going home. About 20 minutes later, a woman named Carla came in. She picked up a prescription from Mike, paid at the counter, and left. A few minutes after she drove away, the gray sedan started up. I watched it pull out slowly. The man didn't follow her right away. He waited until she reached the exit of the parking lot. Then he drove after her. I remember thinking that was strange. But I also remember trying to find a normal explanation. Maybe they lived in the same neighborhood. Maybe he was heading the same direction. Albuquerque has a lot of long roads where you can end up behind the same car for miles. I forgot about it after a while. Then it happened again. A little after 2 a.m., an older guy named Frank came in for a refill. He was a regular. He always smelled like peppermint because he carried those small mints in his jacket pocket. He joked with me while he waited. "Still here every night?" he asked. "Unfortunately," I said. He laughed and took his bag. When he left, I noticed the gray sedan was still there. The driver had changed positions. Before, he had been facing the store. Now he was sitting lower in the seat, almost hidden behind the steering wheel. Frank's truck pulled away. The sedan followed. This time I didn't brush it off. I went into the back and told Mike what I had seen. He looked through the small window in the pharmacy door and watched the parking lot. "That guy buying anything?" he asked. "No." Mike shrugged. "Maybe he's waiting on someone." I knew that was possible. I also knew it didn't explain why he left right after 2 different customers. For the next hour, nothing happened. The store was quiet. The only sounds were the refrigerators humming near the drinks and the printer in the pharmacy area spitting out labels. Then a man came in wearing a dark jacket. He wasn't the same guy from the car. At least I didn't think he was. He walked straight to the counter and asked Mike about a prescription. I couldn't hear everything, but I noticed he kept looking toward the entrance. After he got his medication, he left. The gray sedan started moving less than a minute later. That was when I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the license plate. I wasn't trying to be some detective. I just wanted something in case I was wrong and had to explain why I called someone. The picture was blurry because of the distance and the glare from the lights, but it was enough to show the car. The man drove away. I thought that was the end of it. Around 4 a.m., Mike came back to the front because he needed to grab some supplies from a cabinet near the register. We were talking about closing tasks when I saw the same sedan turn into the parking lot. My stomach dropped a little. The car stopped in the same spot. The driver stayed inside. A few minutes passed. Then the front doors opened. The man walked in. Up close, he looked ordinary. That was probably the worst part. He looked like someone who could stand behind you at a gas station and you wouldn't remember him 5 minutes later. He was wearing jeans and a brown jacket. He had a small cut on one of his hands. He didn't look at the shelves. He looked at me. "Is the guy who was just here still inside?" he asked. I knew exactly who he meant. I kept my voice normal. "Who?" "The last customer. We have a lot of customers." He stared at me for a second. Then he smiled. "Come on," the guy with the prescription. I looked toward the pharmacy door. Mike was watching us through the window. The man noticed. He stepped closer to the counter. "What's his address?" I thought I had heard him wrong. "Excuse me?" "The guy who just left. What's his address?" I backed away from the register. "We don't give out customer information." His face changed a little, not angry, more like annoyed that I had made things difficult. "Just tell me where he lives." Mike opened the pharmacy door. "Sir, you need to leave." The man looked back at him. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then the man walked out. I locked the front doors after he left. No, that was when I saw him standing beside the entrance, looking through the glass. He wasn't leaving. Mike called the store manager, but before anyone answered, the man stepped away from the door and walked around the side of the building. We lost sight of him. I went to lock the inside door that separated the pharmacy area from the front of the store. It was a metal security door we normally use during late hours if we needed to count money. I had just pushed it closed when the sound came. A loud crash. The front window near the vitamin aisle shattered. The man had broken the glass with something heavy. He climbed halfway through the opening and shouted, "Where is he?" I froze. Mike grabbed the phone and called emergency services. The man was inside the store now, standing between the broken display and the entrance. He couldn't reach the pharmacy because the security door was locked. He hit the glass with his hand. "Open this." Mike told him to leave. The man walked along the barrier, trying to see through the glass. He kept asking for the customer's address. That was when Mike pulled me aside and whispered that we had one option. The back exit from the pharmacy led to the alley behind the building. He could get the customer records and check if the last prescription pickup was still in the system while I stayed near the front. I hated that plan, but we didn't have many choices. A few minutes later, Mike found what he needed. The customer from earlier was still waiting outside because his ride hadn't arrived. He was sitting behind the building away from the front entrance. Mike opened the back door and got him out through the alley. The whole time, the man at the front was still looking for a way around. When police arrived, he tried to leave through the broken window. They stopped him in the parking lot. Later, they searched his car. I wasn't there for all of it, but Mike told me what they found. There were several prescription bottles that didn't belong to him, a handgun, and a wallet with someone else's ID inside. The police never told us exactly how many people he had followed or how long he had been doing it. A week later, the broken window was replaced. The store added more cameras and changed the overnight rules. Nobody was allowed to stand at the front counter alone anymore. The pharmacy kept the security door locked during every overnight shift after that. The gray sedan was towed away from the parking lot before sunrise. In July 2014, I was working the overnight desk at a casino hotel off Virginia Street in Reno, Nevada. I had worked nights there for almost 2 years, so I knew the usual crowd. People coming back from the casino at 2 a.m., exhausted tourists, business guys who smelled like whiskey when they handed over their room cards. Most nights were boring. The man who stayed in room 418 was not the kind of guest you remembered because he caused problems. He was polite. That was what bothered me later. He first checked in on a Tuesday around midnight. The front entrance smelled like cigarette smoke from the casino floor, and the carpet near the elevators had that old cleaning solution smell that never really went away. I was behind the desk finishing a report when he walked in. He looked around 40, maybe a little older, short brown hair, gray jacket, a small backpack over one shoulder. He put down a card and asked if we had a room available. I checked the system and gave him 418. He looked at the key sleeve. "Is that close to the elevators?" "Yeah, it's about 10 steps away." He nodded. "Actually, could I get something higher? I sleep better away from noise." That was normal. Guests asked for different floors all the time. I moved him to 824. He thanked me and walked toward the elevators. I didn't see him carry anything else. At first I didn't think about it. Plenty of people traveled light. A backpack was not strange. Maybe he had a car nearby. Maybe he was meeting someone. The next morning, the woman working the day shift told me room 824 had called down around 9 a.m. asking to move again. "Same guy?" I asked. She looked at the note. "Yeah, says the room faces the wrong direction and he wants a better view." I laughed because that was such a specific complaint. We moved him to 1036. 3 nights later, he came down to the desk at 11:30 p.m. while I was checking in a couple from California. He waited patiently until they left. "Sorry," he said, "I need to change rooms again." I pulled up his reservation. "Is there a problem with the room?" No problem. I just don't like this side of the building." I looked at the available rooms. Most were occupied. The only options were near the back hall on the 9th floor or a smaller room on the 7th. He picked the 9th floor immediately. "That one is fine." I handed him the new card. He smiled. "Thanks." The thing was, every room he picked was close to the rooms where we had solo female guests, staying long-term. I only noticed because our hotel had a lot of regulars. Women working at nearby offices, flight attendants, traveling nurses. I knew their names from the system, even if I never met them. Room 914 had a woman staying there for a week. Room 928 had another woman who came to Reno every month for work. I didn't connect it right away. It took a few more small things. One night, around 3 a.m., I was walking through the lobby because the coffee machine near the desk had started leaking. The casino noise behind the glass doors was low, just machines and distant voices. I saw him standing near the hallway that led to the guest rooms. He was not coming from the elevators, he was just standing there. "Everything okay?" I asked. He turned and smiled. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." He walked away toward the elevators. I watched the numbers above the doors. The elevator went up. I thought it was weird, but people did weird things in hotels. I had seen guests wander around because they were drunk, lost, or bored. A week later, one of the housekeepers named Mariah stopped by the desk. "Do you know the guy in 918? "Which guy?" "The one who keeps asking for towels." I checked the system. It was him. "What about him?" Maria looked uncomfortable. "He never has bags. I cleaned his room yesterday. There was nothing there except the hotel soap and the extra towels." That was the first time I pulled up his stay history. He had been in our hotel for 11 days. No luggage charges, no parking, no restaurant purchases, no casino activity attached to his card, nothing. I asked my manager, Mike, about it. "Maybe he's paying cash," he said. "Then why does he keep switching rooms?" Mike shrugged. "People are strange. You work nights long enough, you stop being surprised." I wanted to believe that. The next evening, I saw the security camera footage from the hallway because I was checking another issue. The camera outside the 9th floor showed him leaving his room at 1:17 a.m. He walked to the end of the hall, then he sat down in a chair near the emergency exit. He stayed there for almost 3 hours. I watched the footage twice because I thought I missed something. He never left. He never entered another room. He just sat there facing the hallway. I told Mike. This time he didn't shrug. He asked security to check the other cameras. The pattern was the same. The man spent most nights outside his room moving around the halls. Sometimes he sat near the elevators. Sometimes he stood near the vending machines. Always near rooms with women staying alone. We decided to cancel his reservation. The problem was that we couldn't just walk up and accuse someone of being creepy. We needed a reason. Mike called him from the desk and said there was a maintenance issue with his room and we would need to move him. The man came down 5 minutes later. He was calm, too calm. "What's the issue?" he asked. "We're going to place you in another room for tonight." "Which room?" Mike gave him a room on the 2nd floor near the staff offices. The man stared at him. "No." Mike paused. "No. I want another room." "That is the room we have available." The man smiled a little. "I don't think you understand. I need a different floor." Mike looked at me. "That's the only option." The man took the key card, but he never went upstairs. 20 minutes later, security saw him walking toward the guest elevators. He was heading to the 9th floor. Mike went after him. The man saw him coming and changed direction. He walked faster. That was when we blocked his card. I was alone at the desk when it happened. The system made a small sound, the kind it makes when a key is denied. A few seconds later, I heard the service door behind me open. That door was supposed to stay locked. It connected the staff hallway to the lobby. I turned around. He was standing there. Not angry, not shouting, just standing there. "Can you fix my card?" he asked. I couldn't move for a second. The service door was behind him. "Guests can't use that door," I said. He looked at the door like he had forgotten where he was. Then he smiled. "Yeah, I know." I reached under the desk and pressed the silent alarm button we use for casino security. He noticed. I could tell by the way he looked down. He stepped closer. "Don't make this a bigger thing than it is." I grabbed the phone and called security anyway. He didn't touch me. He didn't threaten me. He just stood there until he heard footsteps coming from the casino side. Then he turned and walked away. He moved quickly through the kitchen entrance. Security caught him near the employee parking area behind the hotel. I stayed in the locked cash room until Mike came to get me. The next day, police searched his room. There were no bags, no clothes, no personal items that made sense for someone staying almost 2 weeks. They found several sets of hotel key cards from different rooms. Some were from our hotel. Some were from other properties around Reno. I don't know what happened after that. Nobody at work talked about it much. Hotels deal with strange people all the time, and sometimes the paperwork disappears into another department. A month later, I was back at the desk during another overnight shift. The lobby was quiet, the carpet had just been cleaned, and the casino lights were flashing through the glass doors. A guest walked in and asked for a room on a higher floor. I looked at the reservation screen, then I looked toward the elevators. I told him the available rooms were on the 2nd floor. I noticed that the boat came back with one man in it right away. The second was that he had turned off every light before he reached our dock. In July of 2011, I worked nights at a private boat station on a lake in northern Minnesota. The place sat off a gravel road about 40 minutes from Ely, past a bait shop with a faded ham sign and miles of pine forest. We rented aluminum fishing boats, sold gas, and stored pontoons for cabin owners. The station belonged to Ray. From 10 at night until 6 in the morning, I was usually alone. I checked fuel, swept the shop, logged late boats, and watched the launch. The office was a small cedar building beside the main dock. It had an old Motorola radio, a coffee maker, and a wall phone that crackled whenever it rained. Ray also kept a prepaid cell phone in the desk because the landline sometimes died. That night was warm for up there, with no wind. Bugs hit the screen in little bursts. The lake beyond the dock lights looked like black glass, and every few minutes I caught the smell of gasoline mixed with wet wood from the slips. Around 11:30, 2 men arrived in a dark green Ford pickup. I knew the driver as Dale. He had launched there before, always late and always paying cash. He was in his 40s, heavy through the shoulders with a close gray beard. The other guy was younger and thin. Dale called him Nick. They wanted a 16-foot Lund with a small outboard. I almost refused because rentals stopped at 10. But Dale said they were checking a spot near the North Reeds and would be back within 2 hours. He put an extra $50 on the counter. Ray had warned me that Dale argued about fishing limits and never seemed to have the right paperwork when a conservation officer came around. Still, he had never caused a serious problem at the station. I copied their licenses, had Dale sign the sheet, and handed him 2 orange life jackets. Nick asked if the boat had a spotlight. I said there was one under the front bench. Dale looked at him. "We won't need it." They carried 2 canvas bags from the truck. One was long enough for rods, the other was short and heavy. Dale lifted it with both hands, and when he set it in the boat, the hull gave a dull knock. I asked what was inside. Anchors. That seemed reasonable. I had seen people use cinder blocks, brake rotors, even buckets of concrete. I wrote down their departure time and watched their navigation lights move north until they passed behind Birch Point. The next few hours were normal. I mopped the office, ate a gas station sandwich, and walked the slips with a flashlight. Around 1, a loon called across the lake. At 2, Dale and Nick were overdue. I was annoyed more than worried. Late renters meant I had to stay near the dock instead of finishing inventory in the back shed. I called Dale's number from the rental form. It rang and went to voicemail. At 2:15, I heard an outboard. The sound came from the north side, low and uneven. I stepped outside. I could hear the motor, but I couldn't see a stern light or the red and green lights at the bow. I grabbed the station flashlight and walked to the end of the dock. The motor stopped. For several seconds, there was only water against the pilings. Then aluminum scraped over a rock near shore. The boat had come in west of the launch and was drifting out of the reeds. I swept the flashlight across the water. Dale sat in the back with one hand on the tiller. He raised his arm over his face. "Turn that off," he called. I lowered the beam but kept it on. "Where's Nick?" He restarted the motor and came toward the dock. He got off at Birch Point. Birch Point was across the lake, near private cabins. There was no public road there, no parking lot. Just docks, owned by families who had known each other for years. Why? His brother has a place. It was possible, but Dale said it like he had picked the answer a second before speaking. He came alongside. I caught the bow rope and tied it to a cleat. Dale stayed in the boat. "Need the keys," I said. He looked down. That was when I saw the life jacket. It was wedged beneath the middle bench, half covered by one of the bags. The orange fabric had a dark red stain across the front. More of it marked the white strap. The smell reached me when I leaned closer. Metal and fish slime, like the cleaning table after someone cut open a pike. Dale followed my flashlight. "Nick cut his hand," he said. "Bad enough to leave his vest?" He didn't want it. The second life jacket was gone. I looked toward the front bench. The compartment was open and empty. "Where's the spotlight?" He took it. Dale's right sleeve was wet almost to the shoulder. His jeans were soaked from the knees down. There were no rods in the boat and the heavy canvas bag was gone. I didn't mention any of that. I retied the bow rope tighter, mostly to give my hand something to do. Dale stood. "Give me the sheet." "What sheet?" "The one with my license." "It's in the office." "Go get it." His voice stayed low. That bothered me more than shouting would have. I stepped back. The office was 60 feet away, and the dock between us was narrow, with boats tied along both sides. "I'll close the rental first." Dale looked past me at the office window. "Go get the paper." I walked away without running. Halfway to the office, I heard him step back into the Lund. Inside, I hooked the screen door and picked up the landline. No dial tone. I tapped the switch, then looked through the window. Dale was bent over near the rear bench. I opened the drawer for the emergency phone. It was empty. Ray had taken it home 2 days earlier because the battery had started swelling. He said he would replace it after the weekend. My own phone, a black Verizon flip phone, was in my backpack. It showed 1 bar. I called 911. The call connected through heavy static. I gave the station name, the lake, and the county road. A woman asked for the location again, but her words kept dropping out. Then the office shifted. A coffee mug slid across the desk and hit the wall. I looked out and saw the entire dock pulling away from shore. The main dock floated on sealed drums. A metal ramp joined it to land, and 2 chains held it to posts. One chain was already loose. Dale stood at the second post with a boat hook, lifting the other free. I dropped the phone and ran outside. The gap at the ramp was 3 feet. I jumped, but Dale shoved the ramp sideways with the hook. I landed on the metal grating, slipped, and caught the rail. He climbed into the lund and started the outboard. The prop wash pushed against the floating dock. The whole section turned, dragging 6 tide boats with it. Cleats creaked. A pontoon hit the fuel dock hard enough to shake the boards. I got up. "What are you doing?" Dale looked at me across the dock. "Phone down." I had left it in the office, still connected if the call had not failed. He used the lund to push us farther out. The ramp slipped free and splashed into the water. I could have jumped then. Shore was maybe 12 feet away, but rocks showed beneath the surface and the dock was turning. I waited. Dale cut the throttle and drifted closer. "Get in." I backed toward the rental boats. He picked up a wooden oar from the floor. Something dark marked the blade. "Get in the boat." The station kept a toolbox inside a compartment under the fuel pump. I had used it that week to fix a battery cable. When my hand reached the door, I opened it and grabbed the first sharp thing I felt, a utility knife. Dale brought the lund alongside. He held the oar across his body and put one foot on the dock. I leaned down and cut the fuel line from the portable tank to the outboard. The rubber split. Gas sprayed across my hand and into the boat. Dale looked down. I jumped between 2 tide boats. The water was warm at the surface and cold below. I went under far enough for my ears to hurt. Gasoline burned my nose. When I came up, I was beneath the bow line of a pontoon, surrounded by metal hulls knocking together. Dale shouted behind me. I pulled myself along a rail and stayed low. The dock lights were drifting toward open water. The lund's engine revved, coughed, then revved again. An oar struck the side of the boat above my head. Dale had climbed onto one of the rentals. He was reaching between the hulls with the oar. I let go and swam under the pontoon. Weeds caught one ankle. I kicked loose and came up on the shore side of the dock. The gap was wider now, maybe 25 feet. The outboard screamed once behind me, then it died. I swam for shore. My knees hit mud and broken rock. I crawled through the reeds, stood, and ran up the gravel road without looking back. The 911 call had gone through long enough for dispatch to identify the station. A county deputy found me on the access road about 15 minutes later. I was barefoot, soaked, and smelled like gasoline. I tried to explain the floating dock and Dale's boat, and the deputy kept asking where Nick was. They found Dale after 3:30 near the middle of the lake. He was sitting in the lund with the oar across his knees. The cut fuel line was leaking into the bottom. The dock was recovered near the south shore. Nick was found just after sunrise. A conservation officer checking the north reeds saw part of a net near the surface. It had been tied to concrete blocks. Nick was tangled in it below the water, along with illegal fish traps and a bag of undersized walleye. The Stain life jacket was his. Ray stopped all rentals after 9. He added steel cables to the dock and put 2 emergency phones in the office. The old rental sheet with Dale's license stayed in an evidence bag at the county office. And with that, we seal away what we've seen and pretend we can forget it. I appreciate you being brave enough to ride this out. Which narrative got deepest into your mind? Tell the comments below. The collection keeps growing into the unknown. Keep your wits about you. Next time comes fast.